I'm not going to play my normal little intro. I'm going to let you hang out with me while I get things set up. We'll chat for a few minutes. I'm going to do a show tonight on contracts. A lot of people are going out, getting their own authority for the first time, getting into the business for the first time, completely overwhelmed and have no idea how to get set up with brokers, how to get their first load, book freight. So we're going to talk about the contracts, what you got to do to get set up. So I've got a few things. I've done this presentation before.
Until
I'm going to
showtime.
go over some of my... Sorry about the blog talk lady talking to you. Let's see if I can mute that. We'll go live here. We'll get started in about 5 minutes. I'll let everybody jump in. Let's see. Should be in the Rates and Lanes group. And on YouTube, I just got to verify everything. So many questions in these groups, so many questions, and I'm looking at these answers, and there's so many bad answers. I want to correct people, but I don't want to insult anybody. Sometimes it's hard to ask questions in Facebook because you have the know-it-alls that want to cut everybody down, but unless you ask the question, you won't know the answer, right? You won't find out unless you make the mistake. So a lot of people have already made this mistake before you, and now they want to make fun of you if you make the mistake, or if you don't understand or don't know. But we all started somewhere. So I'm looking at some of these questions on the Rates and Lanes Facebook group. I'm in there right now. Thought we would be live in that group, but I'll share the video in from somewhere else. UDriveU is live. We're live in the UDriveU network there. Let me get this shared out. We got a few minutes before 7 o'clock. We'll see if anybody jumps on. I'm still going through the Facebook side. I'll go over to the YouTube side here in just a minute.
3 minutes until showtime.
And what she's telling you is the phone line will go open. You can call in now. I'm listening to my own stream on the phone there. You can call in now, and in 3 minutes or whatever she says there, the phone lines will be open. You can start listening in. Until then, you just get to hear her giving you the countdown. But I want to talk about contracts tonight. Some of the basics. I'm not an attorney, and I'm definitely not your attorney. So I'm going to give you some red flag issues you should be looking for and decide how you want to handle it for yourself. But we'll get to that in a minute. Let's see. Get it back to Rates and Lanes here. And Elizabeth's in the other room doing the same. She's screening phone calls.
2 minutes until showtime.
Let's talk about contracts. So I got a couple of minutes, people jumping in. Let's get over to YouTube here. I want to do a show here in the next few days kind of about state of the industry because there's a lot going on right now in this industry.
Until showtime.
A lot of craziness happening politically with the markets, fuel prices going up, rates all over the board. Rates, at record highs when they could have been record lows. A year ago, what we were faced with, exactly 1 year ago right now, we were at record lows. And who knew that we would be where we're at right now? But what does the future have to hold? That's a whole other question. New regulations coming down on the way contractors will be working. And there's some easy workarounds around that. We were already set up at Patriot Star to handle that. That's not going to be a problem. We're looking at expanding and doing some other things that actually, in some ways, it'll help us grow. But I know it's going to scare a lot of people. So I'm going to do an entire show on that as well sometime in the next couple of
Your
days.
show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2,
My show
1.
Let's go live. What is she saying?
Blog Talk Radio.
All right, phones are live. We're still waiting for a few more people to jump in because I had to advertise that this was going to go live at 7 o'clock. But call the number at the bottom of the screen, 917-889-9924. If you have any questions, comments. If you are trying to get your authority or you're signing on to a carrier like us here at Patriot Star where you can self-dispatch and you need to know about contracts, how they work, what you're looking for. And I'm going to talk about parts of contracts that do absolutely apply, even if you are leased to a carrier, even if you are a driver, an employee, there are contract things that you need to know. Absolutely need to know. And it amazes me when I get drivers in that come from some of these mega fleets that had no idea. Nobody ever told them the importance of these contracts. So I'm going to talk about that. And you as a driver fill out a contract with every single load, whether you know it or not. So we're going to talk about that. People just don't understand the importance of some of these things. If somebody can give me a go or no go for the sound, how are we doing with the sound? I'm looking at the YouTube stream. I'll be able to see those comments. It looks like there's too many different places I'm live to be able to answer questions from every different stream. Elizabeth is in the other room. She's screening phone calls, and we will be on various platforms. We are on YouTube, on the UDriveU network. We are on Facebook in the Rates and Lanes group and on the UDriveU channel, and we are sharing that out everywhere. If you don't mind, go ahead, like, share, and get this out there. I think this stuff is super important, especially those of you who are new to the industry, new to owner-operator, are considering getting your own authority. There's a lot of people right now considering getting their own authority. And over the past year and a half, maybe even longer than that, even back before this crisis happened, the number of new applications for new authority was almost tripled what they were prior to. In 2016, 17, we saw rates that were just unsustainable for a lot of people, and we were still seeing new applications, maybe a couple hundred a day, and now we are seeing 400, 500, 600 new MC applications for brokers or for carriers. Everybody wants to get in on this and capitalize on the good rates. But I promise you, most of those are not going to make it, because when I talk to them, remember, I am both a carrier and a broker. I've got owner-operators working under us. I hire other carriers through the brokerage often. I talk to drivers. I talk to dispatchers, which is a whole other issue. The dispatchers need to be watching this. If you are a dispatcher, you need to be watching. If you have a dispatcher, your dispatcher needs to be watching this. Dispatchers are probably one of the biggest problems we have when it comes to contracts. So get your dispatcher and send them the link to this, because I'm going to talk about some stuff that they probably don't know. I see all these things on the various social media platforms about where can I get broker training, or where can I get dispatch training, and where can I get that? And I go and I find out who's giving these trainings, and you've got people that have failed as a carrier, failed as brokers, and, drug addicts, and, people that got out of prison and they have never had a job before, and they jump on this trying to make a quick buck doing these trainings. Some of them might be legitimate. Most of them are not. Most of these fly-by-night training companies, and if you look, most of them aren't more than a couple of years old. I could I could get some of them on and interview them, and within the first 5 minutes, I could show you that they don't know what they're talking about, because I could ask them some difficult questions, and I guarantee, as dispatchers and dispatch trainers, they would not be able to answer the questions. So those are the ones that I really would like to target. But those of you that are dispatching yourself or should be signing the contracts, even if you have a dispatcher, you should know what they are doing. I definitely want to talk to you as well. All right, so we've got a couple people on the phones. And again, I am following the YouTube stream only. I can't, I don't know if I can go back and forth between this and Facebook today, the way I'm set up. So I won't be able to answer any questions till we get toward the end, because I've just got so much going on. But with contracts, the number one contract that every driver touches and signs, and most people don't even realize the importance of that contract, is the bill of lading. And some of you don't even realize that it is a contract. It is actually a federally regulated contract. It actually trumps any other contract out there. What is on that bill of lading? If you go to court, that is the first thing they look at. If you have a claim and you bring your insurance company in, the first thing they look at is the bill of lading. There's a lot of information right on the bill of lading that you as a driver, as the carrier, need to understand. So I want to start right there with that. Bill of lading is number one. And the reason I'm starting there, this is very basic, and some of you are probably already rolling your eyes because you don't even understand. And I know there are people that don't understand the importance of the bill of lading, because this is one of the areas that I focus on when I bring people in for a new orientation that sign on with us, and they have never been shown the importance of what a bill of lading actually does. And there's a few things on a bill of lading that, if they are filled out incorrectly, if they are signed by the wrong person, if they don't say the right thing, could cost you as a carrier. And if you're an owner-operator responsible for these losses, or a driver that maybe has some type of a deductible for losses because of negligence, and that's really what it comes down to. If you don't fill this form out, this paper out, it is negligence on your part. And if it comes down to that, this negligence could bankrupt you. It absolutely could bankrupt you for a lot of different reasons. So I want to talk about that here. Let's see. So 49 USC, United States Code, 49 USC is the section of the U.S. Code that regulates trucking and regulates transportation. It's all about the Department of Transportation. And within that, you have FMCSA. It sets the guidelines for FMCSA. So when you are talking about contracts, you're obviously going to hit all the different points of 49 USC. And you're going to hear a lot of terminology about the Carmack Amendment. So 49 USC, the original regulations which completely control and define how the trucking industry works, go all the way back to the 1800s. So we talk about these regulations, and most people think much more recently. Most people are thinking from the time of deregulation, which was 1980. From 1980 forward, that's what most people define in their head as where the regulations started. But these regulations go all the way back to, I believe, 1877, something like that. But they were very rugged and not very clear back then. They've been updated multiple times with various amendments and various different guidance and things that they have used to change, manipulate, update, and restructure some of the regulations. And that has happened over and over and over. But there are still some remnants of the old regulation going all the way back to late 1800s, early 1900s. The Bill of Lading is one of those, okay? And in 1906, you'll hear about the Carmack Amendment. So the Carmack Amendment was pretty much, they blew up what was before that, restructured it, and it talks about the claims, how claims work for carriers, who's responsible for what. And it defines everything. And quite frankly, it is in the carrier's favor to go with the law, go with the regulations. Let Carmack Amendment define and decide how everything should work. Just about any other contract that a broker gives you or a dispatcher gives you or even shippers, and if they produce those contracts, almost every term that benefits them says you are waiving your right to something. You are waiving your right to Carmack, the Carmack Amendment. You are waiving your right to the regulations as written. The regulations are written in the carrier's favor, and you do not want to waive those. But every broker submits and gives a carrier some type of a setup packet, a broker-carrier agreement, and every term of that agreement is some sort of waiver or reinterpretation of the actual regulation. So to start with anything, you really should go back and look up the Carmack Amendment. Look up, you get bullet points on what it all covers. Look at some of the terminology and the wording of the Carmack Amendment. It covers losses and claims. It covers, and we're going to get into what the types of waivers that you're going to find in the contracts. It covers rights of subrogation. It covers salvation clauses. So all kinds of different things that work in the carrier's favor. So if you don't get paid from a broker or a shipper, you have recourse. You have a way to get the money for the freight bill. And in some cases, you can take possession of the freight. You can even peddle and sell that freight to recover the cost of your freight bill. And not to acquire the freight, not to gain an asset of the freight, but just to cover the freight bill. And that is defined and laid out pretty clearly in the regulations. But of course, the first thing brokers want to do is waive that. They want you to give up your rights of recourse. You have no way to get paid unless you play by their rules. And it's really not in the carrier's favor. And why did it get like this? And I say this about everything. This entire industry, the entire industry is backwards. You don't walk into a muffler shop and say, hey, my pickup truck needs a new muffler. Here's what I'm going to pay. Here's how you will do the job. Because you are not the service provider. That garage is, that shop is. In the trucking industry, it works the other way around. We are the service provider as carriers. We are the service provider, and a broker or a shipper is our customer. But somehow we've allowed our customers to tell us how we will do the job. Not ask us for a quote necessarily, not ask us for the way we'd like to do it, or let us define to them how we want to do it contractually, but they want to define it for us. They want to explain it for us. And it changes a lot. I mentioned even before we got started at 7 o'clock about the new regulations coming down. Some of the special interest groups for trucking are pushing for this broker transparency and different things like that. They will not get it as long as the carriers are contracted. And there's other court cases that go back, I've brought up before, Dixie Midwest Express. You look up the Dixie Midwest Express ruling, and you'll find that a broker that is contracted by a shipper and has the authority to pick any carrier they want and has the discretion to choose one carrier over another and is also responsible for payment of the carrier and takes responsibility for claims and so forth, they essentially own that load. And the Dixie Midwest Express ruling absolutely says that in that case, the broker is defined as the shipper in the transaction, which is why FMCSA has all but done away with the differentiation between a contract and a common carrier. We are contract carriers by and large right now. Very, very few brokers will not supply a contract. So we are all working on a contract basis, and most people don't understand contracts. So that's why it's extremely important to pay attention to what we've got going on here. So the bill of lading, as I said, is the first one, is the most basic. Must I write up a bill of lading? And I'm reading this. This is FMCSA, 49 USC 375.005. Must I write up a bill of lading? You must issue a bill of lading. The bill of lading must contain the terms and conditions of the contract. The bill of lading is the contract. A bill of lading may be combined with an order for service to include the items required by 375-501. In other words, the other parts of your contract. The bill of lading becomes an addendum, essentially, to your master agreement between you, the carrier, and the broker. But the bill of lading is a contract. You must furnish a partially complete copy of the bill of lading to the individual shipper. Now check the wording here. You must furnish a partially complete copy of the bill of lading to the shipper before the vehicle leaves the residence at origin. Interesting that they said you must provide the shipper with the bill of lading. In another section, it says that the carrier is responsible for providing the bill of lading. That right there is where a lot of people give me the deer in headlights look, because when you go to these mega carriers and mega shippers and all that, they have and they supply their version and their copies of the bill of lading. And most drivers have never filled one out, have never seen a blank bill of lading, don't even realize they are responsible for providing it. What does that mean? Now, is it a problem that the shippers provide the bill of lading? Absolutely not. But because the carrier is responsible for it, it is the carrier's responsibility to make sure that it is correct. The shippers provide it out of convenience only. The shippers know what the product is. The shippers can give you that list of items and tell you if it's hazmat and the classes and so forth. The shippers have that information, so as a matter of convenience, they provide the bill of lading. It's a time-saving measure. If they gave you a packing list and you had to break out your blank bill of lading and start writing down all the details of the load, it would probably take an extra 10, 15 minutes for each shipment, and they're shipping thousands of loads a week. So they, for the purpose of simplicity and their convenience, they provide the bill of lading. But it is your responsibility. It is absolutely you as the carrier and you as the driver, owner, operator, or driver. The driver is an agent for the carrier. The driver is the eyes and ears in the front line that is responsible for making sure that that document is correct. And it amazes me, it blows my mind that carriers, especially the mega carriers, do not inform drivers how to complete this form or even read what's on it. We drill it into our drivers' heads, and still, because it's such a lackadaisical attitude toward the bill of lading, we still get these BOLs that come to us that are not completed correctly. And I'm telling you, it can be costly. So what types of things are on there? Let me see if I can bring this screen up for you. Come on, switch screens here. All right, let me just switch over to this other screen. Bill of lading, produced by the carrier. The bill of lading is produced by the carrier. The carrier is responsible for that. It must show the carrier name. It should never show a broker or another carrier. Now, that's a big issue. Big issue. Should never show the broker or another carrier. It is a legal document. The best options for a bill of lading is to use a standard form, the standard truckload bill of lading, or the uniform bill of lading. Now, the standard truckload bill of lading, I'm going to show you that in just a moment. That is actually federally supplied. It is published in the Federal Register. It is a federal document. It is actually in the regulations to use that one. Or the Uniform Bill of Lading. Uniform Bill of Lading is actually a copyrighted version, a few different changes, very similar to the standard truckload bill of lading, but it is copyrighted by the NHTSA, whatever, and basically the ATA carriers. Let me get out of this here. I want to bring up standard truckload bill of lading, and pardon my screen here while I do this. This is what you have probably seen, either this very form or a version of this. Standard truckload bill of lading. This is the version that is published in the federal regs. Okay? Now, you'll see that it actually reads, because it is a federal registered document, it reads like a tax return. All right, so you have each one of these boxes, ship from, ship to, bill of lading number, and so forth. And ironically, it reads like a tax return because look at the back. Every bill of lading should have a front and back. Standard truckload bill of lading, if you print this form, you should print the actual form itself and the instructions on the back, because if there's ever a claim, these instructions become extremely important, just like on a tax return. And I'm saying tax return because hopefully that gets through to you the importance of that. All right, so the bill of lading, super important, federally regulated document. Do you have to have one? No, you don't have to have one. It could be, you know, I said the best ones to use are the STBOL or the Uniform BOL, but it could be written on a napkin. You could use a packing list. You could use whatever. You could just go without. And that has to do with that big event that we all talk about in 1980 called deregulation. Prior to deregulation, and the reason this document is listed in the federal regs is because prior to deregulation, it was a required, absolutely 100% required document. It's not technically required anymore. But I promise you, if you get pulled over for inspection, the first thing a DOT officer is going to say is, let me see your bills. And this is what they want to see. They want to see what is on the truck. They want to see where it picked up, where it's going. This is the document that defines the shipment. It explains the shipment, okay? Must show the pickup and delivery information. Special note on this. If that varies, if that is different than what the broker or your shipper told you to do, you need to verify that. We had a driver a few years ago picked up a load, and it was going, our rate confirmation said it was going to Louisiana. There is a similar town, similar name in California, okay? The rate confirmation said it was going to Louisiana. The driver picked up the load. The bill of lading said California on it. We delivered the load as we were supposed to according to the rate confirmation. We got to the receiver, or what we thought should have been the receiver, and they said, I don't know what this product is. Why are you here? Well, we called the broker at that point, and they said, oh, we fat-fingered it. Instead of that C, it was supposed to be an L, or vice versa, whatever it was. So they screwed up. And if we would have just read that document and called to verify, we would have caught it before we drove it 1,000 miles out of the way. So that document is extremely, extremely important. Read it. Make sure it matches. Oftentimes, that bill of lading will show a destination completely different, absolutely different than what is on your rate confirmation. And the rate confirmation is another contract, another part of the contract, and an amendment, addendum to the broker-carrier agreement. That rate confirmation is your contract that explains what you are supposed to do. And that's what the broker has hired you for, the shipper. That's what they have hired you for. So in other words, if you hire a roofer to go out there and you want black shingles on there and you define in your contract that I want black shingles, but they go and they pick up green shingles, but they don't look at the list to see, and they just install green shingles when you hired them to put on black shingles, obviously there's a problem. Same thing here. This is your receipt of goods. The bill of lading is your receipt of goods. Read it. Make sure it's what it's supposed to be. Make sure it picks up and delivers in the same thing that you've been hired to do. Make sure the product is right and any load numbers and so forth. Make sure they are right. If they are wrong, all you have to do, make a phone call, send an email, verify the information. You do not want to get halfway to what you thought your destination would be to find out that the shipper loaded the wrong product and it was going to a different location, or they gave you the wrong load. Verify ahead of time. That's one of the reasons why the bill of lading should be correct. Verify, and if you are the one that actually writes out the bill of lading, you need to verify the shipment and the goods and the product. Let me switch the screen back over here. Let me try to bring this back. Yeah, let's switch this. Apologize. Shows the pickup and delivery information. Shows the payment terms. What does that mean? Payment terms. Let's go back to this right here. Payment terms. Notice we're already half an hour into the show and I'm still talking about bill of lading. We're going to go to payment terms. Let me blow this up for you a little bit. This section right here. I'll blow it up for you even more. This section right here on this right corner here. Fee terms, collect or pay, prepaid. What does that mean? Collect means that you, when you deliver this load, should get a check in hand. If that box is checked, you need to contact the person that hired you and verify, what am I supposed to do? It is marked collect. And I'm going to show you, normally that goes along with something right here, okay? Which is another section called Section 7. We're going to get to that. Most of the time it'll be prepaid. Does prepaid mean that the broker has already been paid for the shipment? No. There's a term called free on board, FOB. Some of you may have heard of this. Free on board. What free on board means is who is responsible for the payment of the freight bill. FOB origin or FOB destination. If it is FOB origin, then it is if it is FOB origin, then it is the receiver's responsibility to pay for the freight. The reason is it's free on board from the origin point. The shipper no longer owns the freight from the time it goes on the truck at the origin. FOB destination means that the shipper is taking it to the destination. The shipper owns it until the receiver gets it. So most of the shipments that we do, most of them are FOB origin. And while these are all slightly independent terms, you will often see the prepaid and collect and the Section 7 signed or checked depending on FOB origin or FOB destination. But you should have a pretty good understanding what that means, because if it is FOB destination and this check collect box is checked on the bill of lading, you need to verify that you're not supposed to get paid before you deliver it. All right? Then obviously the other important thing, let me scroll back over here, hazmat. If you ever pick up a load and the shipper hands you a bill of lading and for some reason there are check marks or X's in the hazmat section right there, unless you are a hazmat carrier and unless you have placards on your truck, you need to check to see why those are X'd out. What that means is you have hazardous materials on your truck. Depending on the quantity, you must be a hazmat carrier. You must have the proper insurance. You as a driver must have hazmat endorsement on your license and so forth. I'll get into the requirements of hazmat on another show, but you need to make sure that you understand why that is checked. All right, next is so the next one, and this is probably the biggest one. Let me scroll over here and make this bigger so you can see it. This is called Section 7. I'll show you why it's called Section 7 in just a minute. This is on the front of the bill of lading, okay? Let me scroll out here so you can see where it's at. This is on almost every form that you see. Down here, okay? This section down here, all right? Section 7. Let me scroll it back in so we can read it. It's extremely important to look at this. Notice how there's a line right there. It says shipper signature. When you get this form, that looks like that's where the shipper should sign, doesn't it? Read what that says. The carrier shall not make delivery of this shipment without payment of freight and all other lawful charges. And the shipper signs it. Let me give you a tip. The shipper isn't supposed to sign there. Let's go over to this side of the page. It literally says shipper signature and date. The shipper is supposed to sign right here. Literally, right over all that writing. A shipper should sign that right there, where it says shipper signature and date. The shipper signs it here. This is to certify that the above named materials are properly classified, packaged, marked, and labeled, and are in proper condition for transportation according to the applicable regulations of the DOT. If they sign over here, the carrier shall not make delivery of this shipment without payment of freight and all other lawful charges. What does that mean? That means if you unload that truck when you get to the receiver, and if the broker decides not to pay you, nothing you can do about it. You can't file on the shipper. You can't go send anybody to collections. You have, remember I talked about the Carmack Amendment? You have the right to collect. You have the right to file and go after the shipper to receive your payment. Even if the shipper has already paid the broker, you have the right to do that, unless the shipper signs that line right there. They sign that line and you are out of luck. Why do they call it Section 7? Remember, I told you it reads like a tax return. Let me flip this back over to the back of the page. Standard truckload, bill of lading, contract terms and conditions. You scroll down here, this is literally like a tax return where each box has a number and it tells you what to fill out in each box. That particular box is box number 7 and it's right here. Okay, right here. Section 7. Let me make that bigger so we can read it. The consignor or consignee shall pay the freight and all other lawful charges accruing on said property. The consignor shall be liable for the freight and all other lawful charges unless the consignor stipulates by signature in this place provided for that purpose on the face of the bill of lading, the carrier shall not make delivery without requiring payment of such charges, and the carrier, contrary to such stipulation, shall make delivery without requiring such payment. So, the consignor or consignee is responsible to pay the freight and all other charges on the property that you're delivering, unless that box is signed. If that box is signed, the shipper and receiver are not responsible. They are not responsible. So if the broker goes bankrupt, belly up, you've got no recourse to collect. That is the biggest, number one issue on the bill of lading that you need to understand. See them signed every day. Very common on refrigerated shipments, reefer loads. Reefer loads are oftentimes, again, they are FOB destination. In other words, the shipper owns the product until it gets to the actual store shelf. Okay, so You will often see them sign it because they don't want responsibility to have to come back and pay you. A lot of times shippers for refrigerated goods are, your Americold or your U.S. Cold Storage, and they're consolidation companies. So they have product from everywhere else. They don't actually own the product. They're not going to take responsibility to pay the freight charges. If they don't pay, nothing you can do about it. I'm sorry, let me clarify. If the broker doesn't pay, nothing you can do about it. If there is no broker involved and that is signed and they don't pay, if you unload with that signed, nobody has to pay you. It literally says that if you unload the freight, nobody has to pay you. Let's move on. Let's go back to the front of the bill of lading. And I apologize because I see it on my screen still, so I'm reading it and I'm seeing things here. Let's scroll out. Let's go back to the top. Standard truckload bill of lading, obviously ship from and ship to. Bill of lading number. This is the other important part right here. Carrier name. Carrier name. Why is carrier name important? You see it all of the time. You pick up a load for C.H. Robinson or TQL, and you go to pick that up, and where it says carrier name, it's got the broker's name there. I've got news for you. Brokers are not carriers. A broker cannot be the carrier of record on the bill of lading. If there is a claim, remember I told you, you go to court, you get pulled over on the roadside, you have a claim and you have to get your insurance company involved. The first thing they do is they look at this document. What is the very first thing they look at? Who's carrier of record? Who did this? Who's responsible for the damages? One of the reasons that they want to look at that is because, and going back to what I said before the show even started, these dispatch services and these brokers and carriers that don't really know what they're doing, the double brokering that goes on today is out of control. It's out of control. There are so many double brokering schemes. Just blatant, obvious double brokering schemes. They will book it under their carrier name. You go to pick it up, and the bill of lading says carrier name, and it's that particular brokerage or carrier. It's especially important if it is a different carrier name, a broker rather that has broker/carrier authority. They have both, because chances are that customer, the customer thinks that the freight is going on that particular shipper. And again, it goes back to insurance liabilities. If there is a claim, the customer thinks it's going on shipper A or carrier A, and it actually goes on you. So there's a claim, the shipper is going to file on this insurance. That insurance said, we didn't handle it. And your insurance is going to look at this document and say, no, they handled it. So everybody's pointing fingers at each other, and the only person in the middle is you. So you, as the carrier that hauled this and didn't take the time to write just your name, the carrier name, just that one thing. It's a $100,000 shipment. Insurance companies all throw their hands in the air. You're responsible. Will it play out like that every time? Probably not. Could it? Absolutely. Insurance is for that 1 in a million chance, right? We're not going to buy insurance unless there's that 1 in a million chance that we have a claim. There's also a 1 in a million chance that they have an attorney that's good enough to argue this point and you're screwed. And it does happen. That is the first thing. That is one of the biggest reasons why insurance companies deny claims. Then you have to fight it. You have to battle it out. Usually somebody pays, but it's a fight. Why not just take the time, draw a little line through that broker's name, or write your name next to it, or at the very least, down here where you sign your name. Let me bring that back on the screen. Down here where you sign your name, carrier signature and pickup date. Sign your name as the driver and write your carrier next to it. If a broker ever has a problem with you crossing out their name, it's because they don't want their customer to know that they brokered the freight. And if they don't want their customer to know they brokered the freight, they did it illegally. They did not tell the customer that they were going to broker the freight, which means they double brokered it. It was supposed to go on one of their trucks, and that's not legal. They have to tell them. All right. So, last point on this. I can't believe 39 minutes in, we're still talking about bill of lading. We're going to get to broker carrier contracts here in a minute. You think this took... I was going to try to be an hour. Yeah. But it makes me sick that I can talk like this long on something so simple, and I have to talk this long to some people because it's easy to understand and nobody's ever been told before. And that's what gets me. The problems in our industry stem from people have never been told the basics. These are the basics. I'm going to go back to broker carrier agreements, and I actually have some samples. While I pull this up, I'm going to give a shout out to a couple other YouTube channels. There are a lot of really, really bad ones that you could tell don't know what they're doing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's got to start somewhere. But they're giving advice as if they do know what they're doing, and I'm looking at some of the questions and comments that are coming in, and we're looking at guys that have had 6 jobs in a year, right? And have tried to get their authority and lost it. Couldn't manage the money, couldn't manage the paperwork, couldn't manage any of what we're talking about here today. But they have a YouTube channel and they become experts. And they're giving advice. I've actually discussed this bill of lading issue with a couple in particular that I can think of, and they are giving advice, and they are absolutely 100% wrong. But there are a few guys that are right. And I'm going to give a shout out to those guys. I don't want to talk bad about anybody, but I do want to talk about a couple that are giving some good advice. One of them, which is a relatively new find for me, I guess he's been around for a while, and that's James Best. I think his YouTube channel is Other Trucker James Best. He's got some good opinions. He's got a fleet. He's got a pretty decent business model going on. He's got some good advice for some people. I tend to agree with a lot of what he says. Nobody's perfect. I'm not going to agree with everybody. But that's a channel you should check out. There are some others, but I just want to give a shout out to him. I've been wanting to do this show for a while, and I was kind of watching his show earlier today, and it pushed me. I need to do this, right? So, for James Best, shout out to him and his channel. All right, let me get this back up here. Broker carrier agreements. What to watch out for. These are the red flags. I'm going to give you the red flags. I'm using all my screens to give you the presentation, so I have not looked at, not even one time have I looked at any of the questions or comments that might be coming in. So let me try to do that real quick before I switch screens again here. All right, how about cargo value on the bill of lading? Does it trump the broker's confirmed email? It can, yes, absolutely. Cargo value is another thing that is on the bill of lading. It will give you a declared value, and you need to understand what your liabilities are. That is a contract. A broker's email is not a contract. You could use it, if you had to argue a point with them, you could use that in your defense, but an actual contract is the bill of lading. So yes, you should look at any declared values on the bill of lading. I'm sorry, I skipped that over. Somebody said, do you work with carriers as well? Absolutely. I am a carrier myself. And we're running a small fleet here at Patriot Star, and we have a brokerage. So I absolutely have worked with carriers, helped carriers. I've worked with brokers, helped brokers. I have another company, You Drive You, which is what you're looking at here. I have put on presentations. I rented out the Harrah's Casino conference hall in Kansas City, 2017. We had a big get-together out there. I'm planning on doing another one. We actually were going to try to do one last year, and then the world ended. So we're hoping to do something else. I have an office in Tennessee as well as in Florida, and we're looking at either of those locations to potentially do another, I called it the Drive seminar, Drive to Success. So we are going to do another seminar. I actually have a whole new business plan, business model that we're getting ready to roll out. I was on the phone earlier today and yesterday. I've pushed TruckLogix. I've told you TruckLogix, great TMS. TruckLogix is great. I'm going to start offering some services to help those of you with bookkeeping and different things. I don't want to reveal too much because I don't have all of that put together yet, the packages, how we're going to do it, but we're working on some things that should help everyone. I'm a one-truck flatbed carrier. Get calls from people to haul cars and other stuff. Should I get broker authority? If you want to hire somebody else to haul them, you could. If you're a one-truck flatbed carrier, if you can move them on your own truck, you could do that. You don't have to have broker authority to get customers. But I don't want to get too off topic. We'll come back to that. All right, so I want to clarify this. So if Section 7 is signed, must the payment to the carrier be made immediately? That's the catch-22 right there, okay? That's the gray area. Technically, if you go to the grocery store, you get your groceries together and you get it all checked out and the girl scans everything, you take your fancy little plastic credit card and you swipe that card, you have made payment, but you've made payment on credit terms. You don't actually have to send the cash to the credit card company for 30 days. You have extended credit terms to the broker. So this is where it gets difficult because most of the time in a broker carrier agreement, which we're going to get to, you have extended that broker credit. And essentially, you have said that you have accepted their payment terms. They have, for all intents and purposes, they have swiped that credit card with you. They have paid you. But you don't have any recourse if they don't pay. Okay, so if you are working for a shipper directly, if there is no broker involved and Section 7 is signed, absolutely you should be prepaid. That payment should be the check, the cash in hand before you make delivery. If there is a third-party broker involved, then you have to decide if it's worth the risk. We're going to talk about the risks in contracts and stuff in a minute, but you have extended that broker the credit. You have to decide if you're going to take the risk that they will pay you. But know for a fact that if that is signed, you have no other option to collect. You could file in the broker's bond, and the broker has a $75,000 bond. So how many times will that bond be extinguished before, a big broker like C.H. Robinson, for example, who's moving, tens of millions of dollars of freight every single day, they only have to post a $75,000 bond too. So that bond, if you file on that, maybe you get pennies on the dollar, maybe nothing at all. They might just deny your claim. So your next option is to go after the shipper or receiver to get paid. And if that Section 7 is signed, you don't have any option. All right. And so Starcar Dave, who is one of our owner-operators, he's actually going to get his own authority soon. We're helping him make that transition. He says you can certainly ask. It usually doesn't go well. That's true. However, brokers need to understand. Again, I'm not doing this show just for carriers and dispatchers. I'm doing this for brokers as well. If your customers are signing Section 7, you need to make damn sure that you have your stuff sorted out, because I promise you that most carriers are going to deliver it whether that's signed or not. Hopefully those of you that are watching this recording or live stream right now, hopefully you'll think twice and maybe question it or at least make a phone call to verify. But I promise you that 99.9% of the drivers out there are just going to make delivery, and they're not going to read that. They're not going to look at that. They don't care because nobody told them, which is why I'm stupefied that nobody told them. But they will make that delivery, and if the shipper doesn't pay, you as the broker also can't get paid. You as the broker cannot go after the shipper for payment. You need to decide if you will accept those terms with your customers. Best practice is to cross out the signature if you can get away with it. That's absolutely true. A lot of times the shippers don't know what that means. Remember, if I can, maybe I can pull it up again. It looks like, where is this here? It looks like That's where the shipper is supposed to sign. It says shipper signature right there. It looks like that's where they're supposed to sign. There's a nice clean line, big blank spot. That looks like that's where they should sign. They really should sign over here on this side, right? That's where they should be signing, but it looks like they should sign right here. So a lot of times the shipper will sign that by mistake. So if that's the case, whoops, getting ahead of myself. If that's the case, just let them know. Or tell them, hey, did you read this? You have to pay your bill. You didn't give me a check. Have you already paid the broker? Call the broker, get them involved. Especially if it's not somebody that does regular shipments. You know, some of the big shippers that, mom and pop shippers. Some of the big shippers, they literally have that pre-printed on the form. And if you ask them to cross that out, oh, we can't do that because it's pre-printed. And sometimes they will battle you on any little change, even putting the carrier name on there. I have unloaded a shipment before because they would not put the carrier name on the bill of lading. It is that important. Section 7 is that important if you don't have a good creditworthiness history with your broker or your customer. And absolutely, if it's the shipper themselves that hired you and then they sign that, they're literally saying, we're going to hire you to do this. We're not going to pay you. That's literally what it says verbatim. We're not going to pay you if you make delivery. You got to get paid first. If you don't get paid first, we're not going to pay you. That's what it says. So yeah, you need to verify. And if they want to argue with you on that, unload the freight because it's not worth it. All right, we're going to get back to the contracts. What to watch for? Broker carrier agreements. I don't normally like to put out there what brokers I get these from, but this is pre-printed on my my PowerPoint presentation here. So what to watch out for? Waiver of statutes and regulation. Number one, remember I said the biggest thing that a broker carrier's contract is for, the biggest thing is they want you to waive all of your rights. They want you to waive statutes and regulations which allow you to correct. Don't waive anything if you can help it. If a broker, and it's like 1 out of 1,000, right? But we have some brokers that do not provide us with a contract. Those are the brokers you want to work with. That is the best broker because that means they are not asking you to waive anything. That means they are going off of 49 USC. They're using the Carmack Amendment. That is the basis for your arrangement with them. That's what you want. That is the best situation. I had a carrier contact me because we do consulting. A carrier contacted me. They were super upset because they wanted to do a load for some brokers that actually had some, different lanes they wanted to run, and the broker didn't have a contract for them. Broker didn't think they needed a contract, and the carrier almost demanded that the broker gave them a contract. That's stupid. If the broker doesn't want a contract, it's in your benefit. Even better, provide them with your contract. How many of you carriers have a contract to give to one of your customers? You should have something. Rules circular, tariffs, whatever it is, you should have something to give to your customers, your brokers. You don't have to. Let the Carmack Amendment regulate everything. But number one, waiver of statutes and regulation. That's what the first thing brokers want to do. So here's an example. This is pulled directly out of a carrier broker's contract. This agreement is for specified services pursuant to 49 USC, yada, yada. Those are the regulations. This is pursuant to the regulation, to the extent that terms and conditions herein are inconsistent with Part B, Subtitle 4 of 49 USC ICC Termination Act of 1995, the parties expressly waive any and all rights and remedies they may have under the Act. If this contract is inconsistent, if it is inconsistent with the law, with the regulation, you waive your right to the law. Okay. Really? I don't get it. People sign that and they don't even read it. Next. What to watch out for? Indemnification and the vague terminology, quote, arising out of. You'll see this in a lot of contracts. This is out of another actual contract that we have signed or changed here in at Patriot Star. Indemnification. Carrier will indemnify, defend, and hold harmless broker, its affiliates, and its customers as intended third-party beneficiaries from any and against all losses as defined below, arising out of or in connection with the transportation services provided under this contract, including the loading, unloading, handling, transportation, possession, custody, or use, maintenance of cargo equipment, performance, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. What does that mean? Means if something goes wrong, even if it's their fault, you hold them harmless. You will not sue them. Really? So if somebody hires you and they intentionally do something wrong, and some of these contracts actually say that, even if it's intentional, I didn't read this. Is this one? Is the intent of the party, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Some of them literally say, even if they intentionally do wrong, they intentionally cause an issue, they are not to be held liable by you. You cannot sue them for damages. Really? Watch out for that. Next, special or consequential damages. This is a huge one. Carrier agrees to indemnify, defend, and hold harmless broker and its customers, its employees or agents from any and all claims, damages, liabilities, costs, and expenses, including attorney's fees and consequential damages arising from carrier's performance, attempted performance, or failure to perform its obligations under this agreement, or, remember that other term from the last one, arising from the negligent, reckless, or willful misconduct of carrier or its employees or agents. Agents, ding, ding, ding. Those of you who happen to be dispatch services who are representing yourself as agents of a carrier, it's your obligation to defend shall include costs of defense as they accrue. Exclusions in carrier's insurance coverage shall not exonerate carrier from this liability. Whoops, let me go back. I'm on the wrong screen here. Back up. What does that mean? Special or consequential damages. What that means is, let's say you have a load of some kind of widgets going to the widget factory, and they're going to take that widget and weld it to that widget and make a double-sized widget, okay? And you have a flat tire, and you show up an hour late. This is some kind of a special just-in-time shipment. They're waiting on you. They brought in their crew. They have 1,000 people running that widget welding line, right? And they are ready for you to show up, and you don't show up, so they have to shut the line down. Now, they have 1,000 people standing there unemployed. They're going to come after you and make you pay the salary of those 1,000 people. Consequential damages. You're not just responsible for the freight or the damages to the freight. You're responsible for everything down the line. Happens a lot in automotive. Happens a lot with some of the big grocery chains. If there is a loss of revenue, for example, you pick up some flowers out of Miami, you pick up some roses going to a big grocery store chain, and the markup on those flowers is 100%, right? So this $100,000 load of roses is worth $1 million to them. You are late, and because you're a day late, it's Valentine's Day, they can't sell them. You are late, and they suffered a loss of $1 million. They're coming after you for that $1 million. Consequential, special and consequential damages. You are not legally obligated to be responsible for that. Your legal obligation ends at the replacement of the cargo itself, the actual value, not their lost revenue, not their downtime, nothing else. Unless you sign this, special or consequential damages. Be careful with that one. Redline that, work your way around it. Next. Come on, you can do it. All right, additional insured. This is another stupid one. Brokers should not ask for this. They don't intend to ask for this, but insurance carrier shall furnish the broker with certificates of insurance. Absolutely fine. Don't have a problem giving a certificate of insurance to the broker. Or insurance policies providing 30 days advance written notice. That's what a certificate is for. Notice cancellation, termination, naming the broker as an additional insured. That's where there's a red flag. Why do they want to be additional insured? And unless otherwise agreed, subject to the following minimum limits, yada, yada, yada. The broker doesn't own the freight. Broker doesn't own the trailer. Broker doesn't own the truck. Broker doesn't employ the driver. Broker is not going to be at the dock for the shipper or the receiver. The broker is not involved whatsoever. If there is an issue, why are they additional insured? Now, if, for example, you are doing a power only for a broker and they do own the trailer, that makes sense. But there's no reason for them to be additional insured. What that can do with some insurance companies can actually file a claim without telling you because they are additional insured. It also means that if you are in some kind of a fatality accident, you have that $1 million of insurance to cover everything, right? You go to court. Well, they are also additional insured, so your attorneys now have to also cover them if they're brought into the lawsuit. Just cut your $1 million coverage in half. Now you've got $500,000 for you, $500,000 for your broker customer. They can get their own damn insurance, right? There's no reason for them to be additional insured unless they have some type of role to play in the shipment. They own the equipment. They own the trailer. It's actually their product. Otherwise, no reason for that. Certificate of insurance is all they need. That's 99.9% of the time, that's all they really intend. They just want to be informed of their insurance canceling. Some insurance companies, even if they have a certificate of insurance, will not notify the broker within 30 days notice. Most of them will. A couple of them will not, which is why brokers put that in there. Verify that with your insurance company. Check with the broker on their intention, but there's no reason for them to be additional insured. All right, moving on. Come on. There we go. Right of offset. Huge one. Huge. And I've got a story to tell you about this. Right of offset means, let's just read it. And as such, carrier agrees to refrain from all collection efforts against shipper, receiver, consignor, consignee, customer. Carrier further agrees that broker has the discretionary right to offset any payments owed to carrier. Any payments owed to carrier. Let me say that again. Any payments owed to carrier hereunder for liability incurred by carrier pursuant to Section 8 of this agreement. This was another brokerage. What that means is right of offset. Right of offset gives that broker the ability to hold any, remember it says any payments that they owe you, even if there is a suspected claim. This is a major one. This is a big problem for some carriers. Let's say you deliver a load for a broker and you get to the receiver for this load, and the receiver, they don't like the way the boxes look, so they write on that bill of lading, they write received with damages. Okay, what are the damages? How much are the damages? We need to get more information. But they just write potential damages or subject to, whatever. The broker gets that. The broker no longer has to pay you until that claim is closed. We'll talk about the claim process, but going back to the Carmack Amendment, broker has, or the receiver has 9 months. 9 months to file a claim. 9 months. Even technically, even if the bill of lading is clean, they still can go 9 months later, file a claim on the carrier. Once the claim is filed, there's a period of 2 years where they can take it to court and battle it out. So if you have to actually get lawyers involved and it turns into a big deal, it could be an additional 2 years. So you have 2 years and 9 months that you're battling out this garbage with, because somebody wrote something on there. It could potentially be a $0 claim, no payout. That broker does not have to pay you. They do not have to pay you a dime of anything they owe you, not just for that shipment. But here's where it gets worse. It says any payments owed to carrier. So let's say you have a fleet of 100 trucks. And this is a true story. Say you have a fleet of 100 trucks. And I'm going to just kind of be vague on the details here, but it is a true story. And with that 100 trucks, you work with a particular broker and you run up a bill of about, let's say $200,000. One of those trucks delivers a shipment and on the bill writes that there's a claim. Now the claim is not very much. You're doing thousands of loads, got thousands of, different things going on. You've got a couple $100,000 outstanding. It's just a little claim, whatever. We'll file it away. We'll get our insurance involved. It'll go away, no big deal. You keep hauling loads for that broker. 30 days go by, you still haven't been paid. Hey, Mr. Broker, why have I not been paid? Well, because there was a claim, and we're going to exercise our right of offset. In the case of my true story, this carrier was factoring. They had several trucks. They were running everything they had through a factoring company, non-recourse. Non-recourse doesn't exist. That's a whole other contract we won't get to right now. Non-recourse contract. The factor said, well, we're not going to be able to collect $200,000 or whatever was outstanding. $200,000 is a huge hit. We have to cut off your credit line, Mr. Carrier. So they held everything. Now, every broker, every customer that this particular carrier worked for had a notice of assignment that every payment they had must go to the factoring company. The factoring company will no longer release any of those payments at all to the carrier until this claim is settled, because they don't want to lose $200,000. Seems reasonable from the factor. But this carrier has 100-some trucks running. How are they going to pay their bills? They can't make their payroll the first day. So paychecks bounce. Half of their drivers leave. Now they've got all these trailers and all this equipment sitting out that's not working. And the bill comes due for that. They don't have the money for that, because not only, even if they can be good and they're back in black for making the payroll, now they have half their drivers have already left. How many people would you stick around with a company if your paycheck bounced? So now half their drivers left, and they've got all this equipment sitting, and it's not working, but they have to make a payment on it. Now they can't make a payment. Next step is file bankruptcy. The claim was about $750. That's it. This carrier had about 100 trucks. A claim of $750 took them out because of right of offset. Yeah, I know you've only got one truck. Maybe you're going to have 2 or 3 trucks. But can you take a hit like that? Every customer you have, and they will no longer release payments to you? All right, moving on. Right of offset. Line that crap out. Salvage claims. Here's one that we lined out. I cut it and I showed you how we kind of changed it. Salvage claims. Carrier. Whoops. Come on. Salvage claims. Carrier shall waive any and all right of salvage. Now, Carmack Amendment gives you the right of salvage. What that means is if the freight is damaged, let's say you get produce, you arrive at the grocery store that's receiving it, and they say, oh, it's the wrong temperature. Well, it's the wrong temperature for them, but it's perfectly good produce. Somebody else could buy it and pay the freight charges. But in this case, carrier shall waive any and all rights of salvage or resale of any customer's damaged goods, and shall, at broker's reasonable request and direction, promptly return or dispose at carrier's cost any and all of customers' damaged goods shipped by the carrier. Let me emphasize that. At broker's reasonable request and direction, promptly return or dispose at carrier's cost any and all of customers' damaged goods and shipped by carrier. Let's say you pick up a load of produce in Miami that goes to Seattle, Washington. At carrier's cost, now you have to deliver it. It says broker's reasonable request. I would say that's not reasonable, but that's kind of a gray area. I mean, delivering it right back to where you got it from seems relatively reasonable to some. So it's at your request, at your cost as the carrier. And if you're leased to a carrier, potentially your cost as the owner-operator. Carrier shall not under any circumstances allow customers' goods to be sold or made available for sale, otherwise disposed of in any salvage markets, employee stores, or any other secondary outlets. So what, again, produce can easily be, this happens a lot in produce, taken to some other type of farmer's market, and they can sell it, they'll buy it, and at least pay the freight bill. In the event the damaged goods are returned to the customer and salvaged by customer, carrier shall receive a credit for the actual salvage value of the goods. In other words, they allow the customer to salvage it, which seems reasonable. And then you'll get paid for your freight. So, and then we crossed a lot of that out, as you can see. And we said carrier shall retain the right of salvage to offset freight damages as allowed in the Carmack Amendment. So, as allowed in the regulations. That's what we agreed to. So, all right. And they accepted that. Now, this is one that's I'm a little bit on the fence about. Let's say that you are a big company, like Kellogg's cereal, for example. Kellogg's is a well-known company. They spend a lot of money in marketing. You know, Kellogg's, Coca-Cola, you name it. They spend all this money in marketing, you know, and everybody recognizes the brand. So let's say that you go to one of these warehouses and you have some of this well-known product on your truck, and it's denied because the product, for whatever reason, is bad. I can absolutely see why the customer would not want that product to be sold elsewhere, for you to waive your right of salvage. Reason being, let's say that product is bad, you take it to some secondary market, they sell it, and a bunch of people get sick. Who gets sued? The person whose name's on the box gets sued. So I understand this one, and this is one that you have to take with, you know, back and forth, grain of salt, and decide, what do you want to do with this? Okay? But having the right of salvage gives you the option. Now, there have been brokers in the past that are not brokers and their customers who took advantage of this. I heard a story from an attorney who they were hauling basically Caterpillar equipment, high-value Caterpillar equipment. And they delivered it, and the way the carrier had chained everything down, they actually had special chain points on this equipment, but they chained it down and it scraped the paint. Well, of course, but that's where you're supposed to chain this equipment down. Well, the receiver refused the equipment. The carrier turned around, they're all part of on this scam. Carrier turned around and exercised their right of salvage, sold that equipment still to the same customer at about half price, who then turned around and, you know, made a huge profit on it and split it back and forth. But because they had the right of salvage, they were able to do that, and there was nothing the shipper could do. So this is one where it could go both ways. You just have to be reasonable and understand the whole side of it, both sides of it. All right, back to the screen here. And I believe I've got 13 examples, and I've talked about these before. The SLC provision, shipper, load, and count. All right, so in a contract, when you're signing, if you are not allowed on the dock, which happens especially now since COVID, you know, they don't allow the drivers on the dock at all. Sometimes they don't even allow the driver in to go pay the lumper. You got to sit in your truck, you get a phone call, you pay it electronically, and you put the paperwork in the back, whatever. Shipper, load, and count. You are not allowed to do it. You're not allowed on the dock. You're not allowed to count it. You're not allowed to see it. You're nothing. The shipper does all of it. If the shipper loads all that product in your trailer and you deliver it and it's wrong, it's still your responsibility unless you sign shipper, load, and count on the bill of lading, SLC. This is one that most drivers do know. So make sure that they allow you to write shipper, load, and count. The next one here. So here's another good one. No penalties for non-payment. Every broker-carrier agreement says that they will pay in whatever, 30 days, 21 days, 28 days, 30 days. I've seen them say 45 days. But whatever it is, they have some type of definition of when they'll pay. Most people just read over that. Oh, great, they pay in 30 days. Let's sign this. But it does not say what happens if they don't pay. And that's the problem. So section whatever on the contract says broker agrees to pay carrier all some owed monies, yada, yada, in 30 days. But if they don't pay in 30 days, what happens? Because it's not defined in the contract. Do you get to charge interest? Do you get, is there any penalty for not payment? Is there any, what can you do? So for that one, easily just pencil in 2% after 30 days, $50 late payment fee. Maybe they accept it, maybe they won't. But just understand, it's irrelevant. If there are no penalties for late or non-payment, it's completely irrelevant that that's even in there. If there's no penalties, who cares? What happens if they don't do it? Nothing. So they can pay whenever they want to. There's nothing to stipulate that they can't. There's no penalty for non-payment. So that's another one that you have to pay attention to. Here's one that's not that big a deal to me, but it's something you should pay attention to. Is the Homer provision, arbitration, meaning every contract says if this contract, there's a dispute, it goes back to the state of whatever courts, to arbitration and so forth. And it's such and such, it'll define who is the arbitrator in the case, okay? Typically, though, it's somebody near them. So if you, for example, we are based out of, we've got an office in Florida and Tennessee, and, maybe we do some work out of Virginia, we're running the East Coast. If we do all that for a broker in California, and then there's a dispute, it makes no sense for us to then have to fly to California or hire an attorney in California to battle this out. And a lot of times a broker will use that to their advantage because it's not worth your time to battle it out if you have to travel to another state that's not involved. Most of the time, it should read that it's either in your home state or the place of business where it happened. So if the load picked up in Virginia, it can be ruled by a Virginia court, right? Doesn't matter where either party is. So it's got to be one of the three, where you are, where they are, or where the business was done. It's always better to be in your favor where you are. So it's just something to consider depending on the type of work you do. If you're looking at a long-term contract, that's definitely more important. All right, this is the one that makes it very difficult to amend anything. All right, this is the integration clause, the entire agreement. Now, this is an actual example that we pulled out of a contract. Unless otherwise agreed in writing, this agreement contains the entire understanding of the parties and supersedes all verbal or written prior agreements, arrangements, and understandings of the parties relating to the subject matter stated herein. The parties further intend that this agreement constitutes a complete and exclusive statement of its terms, and that no extrinsic evidence may be introduced to reform this agreement or any judicial arbitration proceeding involving blah, 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 blah. What that means is that is the end-all, be-all agreement. So even though it's got all this garbage in here that we're talking about, which is nonsense that you don't want to agree with, it is the rule. It is the only rule. That you've waived your right to Carmack, and I will recommend that I told you should have your own contract to include. You should have your own rules circular or tariffs published. We've got one. I've got it published on our website. It's irrelevant most of the time if this integration clause is in the contract. So another one that you might see a lot in some of the social media groups is something about the including an accessorial sheet. Unless the broker agrees to it and signs it, your contract, your accessorial sheet is irrelevant. And it says right here, you could have it published, you could have it listed. As a contract carrier, this contract is the only thing that matters. Remember, if you were a common carrier and you were working under your own tariffs, your own rules circular, and you provide whatever, then you have a leg to stand on. But when you're a contract carrier, this is the only thing. You need to make sure that this is everything that you agree to, and if you want to include anything else, it needs to be included here, or you need to literally line this out and say, except as published in such and such location, www.mycarrierswebsite.com. Okay, so just make sure that you understand that this agreement is the end-all, be-all, and will be what the courts look at if you have a dispute. And there's no ways around it. Non-recourse provisions. This is basically like Section 7 we talked about before. The parties agree that broker is the sole party responsible for payment of carrier's charges. That's a problem. You cannot go after anybody else, any other benefiting party, which could be the shipper, the receiver. The shipper benefits when you deliver a load because they get paid for that freight that you hauled. They sold the freight. They benefit. The receiver benefits because now they've received the product that they purchased. They both benefit. You are the only one with an expense. The broker is the sole party responsible for payment of carrier's charges. You can't go against anybody else that benefits in this load. Failure of a broker to collect payment from its customer shall not exonerate broker of its obligation to pay carrier. Broker agrees to pay carrier invoice 30 days. Remember what we said on that one before. Broker agrees to pay carrier's invoice 30 days from the receipt of bill of lading or proof of delivery on shorter terms as agreed in writing by carrier, which is usually like a quick pay agreement, by the way. Provided by carrier is not in default under the terms of this agreement. If broker has not paid carrier's invoice as agreed and carrier hasn't complied with the terms of this agreement, carrier must file a claim for payment within 12 months. We probably changed that to like 9 months. Under no circumstance shall carrier seek payment from the shipper or consignee. That's just like Section 7. You've got no recourse if that's in there. Get rid of it. I'm going to just move right on. Back solicitation clauses, that's another one. Obviously, we can talk about back solicitation. Back solicitation, anytime you are introduced to a customer, shipper, or receiver by a broker, if you do any business with them in the future, it's probably back solicitation. The big, debate is, well, what if that shipper contacted me? It doesn't matter. You were introduced. There are brokers that spend a lot of time and money to get their foot in the door with certain shippers. Sometimes the shippers don't even know that the brokers have these arrangements, right? And they'll ask the carrier to come back for another load, thinking that all the business goes through the brokerage anyway. But then the carrier backdoors them and bills them directly, and the shipper doesn't know what's going on. Anytime you do business with a customer, shipper, or receiver that you were introduced to by a broker is back solicitation. Now, 99% of the time, that is not enforceable. I will give you that. It's not enforceable, but it is an ethical issue. If a broker finds out you backdoored them on something, good luck working with that broker ever again. And if it's a big broker or one of your primary customer brokers, it's somebody that you have a big portion of your business with, think real long and hard before you do this, because it could cost you your business. It could cost you a lot of money. Maybe they don't have a way to enforce fees and different things, but if they lose a big contract, if they had a multi-million-dollar contract with a big shipper and you backdoor them on that, you can better believe that no matter who contacted who or how it came about, you're going to court. You better have an attorney ready. But just be ready for the worst. All right. Other fine print. Hostage loads. A hostage load is defined as the carrier's refusal to immediately release or produce freight upon demand by broker or shipper, deliver freight at the scheduled time and place of delivery, provide broker with information on the location of freight, or other unauthorized exertion of control over freight. Okay. Hostage load is defined as a carrier's refusal to immediately produce, or deliver freight at the scheduled time. If you don't deliver the freight at the scheduled time, they consider it a hostage load. Time and place. So if you end up at the wrong address, you are not at the right time, provide broker with information on the location of the freight. You don't answer the phone because you're in the middle of Wyoming and you don't have a signal. Or unauthorized exertion of control over the freight. And obviously they mean if you intentionally hold the freight hostage, which would be more in line with what they mean. Now, what they want to say is, what they mean is they don't want you to intentionally hold a load hostage. But what they actually said was any reason, any reason that you don't deliver the freight at the scheduled time and place of delivery, any reason. So if you get a flat tire and you're 5 minutes late, technically it's a hostage load per this contract. All right, no big deal. We're 5 minutes late. It's a hostage load. But wait. What are the consequences for a hostage load? Let's read on. In the event of a hostage load, carrier agrees to pay the broker the greater of $5,000 for each day that the carrier holds the load hostage, or the actual amount that broker incurs to resolve the unauthorized retention of the hostage load. Each day, the greater of, whichever is greater, $5,000. So it might only be $50 that the broker, they had to make a phone call. It cost them $50 to get the load. But per this contract, it's the greater of. So it's $5,000 at a minimum. What that means, it's a minimum $5,000 fine, even if you're 5 minutes late per this. Now, if it said if it was an intentional hostage load and so forth, but it doesn't say that. It says any refusal to immediately release or produce freight upon demand, deliver freight. Commas are important, deliver freight at the scheduled time. Hostage load is defined as the carrier's refusal to immediately deliver the freight at the scheduled time and place of delivery, Flat tire, you have a breakdown. Now it's $5,000 per day because you weren't there on time and they're considering a hostage load. Carrier agrees that such amount constitutes reasonable liquidated damages for damage to broker's reputation with shippers and others. Broker shall be entitled to all other available or alternate remedies at law or equity in the case of a hostage load, which also goes back to what we were saying about consequential damages. That is not good. That's not good. All right, so that's kind of the end of my presentation on like the big red flags you need to watch for. We have literally seen contracts that say they will not pay you if they don't want to, layman's terms. But the takeaway for this needs to be read the contracts, read every word of the contract. I've done this show before, similar presentations, and the overwhelming majority of people seem to think that they don't need to even read the contract. No reason. Just read it. You don't have to be an attorney to read it. I'm moving around here some screens. I'm closing this down. All right. Okay, so I'm going to get to a couple of these questions here. When you find brokers that are double brokering freight for your company, do you put them on a do not haul list? Yes and no, maybe. Yes, no, and maybe. There are some brokers that do it on a regular basis. I prefer not to work with them. For me, as a broker, if I find a carrier is double brokering my loads, not only do I not work with that particular that carrier, if that carrier is double brokering my load, I don't pay that carrier. I pay the delivering carrier. I pay the end user. And we had one recently, and we had an agreement for a $3,000 load, I believe it was. We found out that it was a double brokered load. And what's interesting is a lot of people don't even know. They think they have lease agreements and so forth. You cannot lease another carrier. A carrier cannot lease on another carrier, okay? So there's no such thing as a lease agreement to a carrier, between two MC numbers. It's hauled under one MC number or it's not hauled at all, right? So MC1 cannot put the freight on MC2 and make that work. It doesn't. There's no legal way to do that under the current rules. The other truck, literally, both trucks have to be on the primary carrier's insurance and everything, okay? If that happens, we pay the delivering carrier. In this case, it was a $3,000 load. We found out that the delivering carrier was getting paid $1,600 because that was their lease agreement. So the first carrier made almost 50% of the load. So, of course, we made arrangements to pay the delivering carrier. Problem was, here's the problem. Going back to that bill of lading, the bill of lading had the first carrier's name on it. If the bill of lading had the delivering carrier's name on it, it makes my job a lot easier to make sure that you get paid correctly. So now it becomes a Mexican standoff to where I have to figure out who I'm going to pay and how I'm going to pay them. And it's a big problem. If your signature is without prejudice, then you don't lose your common law rights. Okay, I don't know where you read that, but we have, I guess I don't even know what you really mean by that. You don't lose your common law rights, because common law rights are, for example, I cannot sign a contract with you for murder, okay? That's illegal. And even if I have a contract, you cannot do that, right? I can't force you to do that. There's no way that I could take you to court and say, because you didn't do this. But the FMCSA is not really, the 49 USC and everything under FMCSA is really not a law. It's a regulation. All of those can be waived. Let's see if I can look at the other stream here. Wow, okay. Give me a minute. Let me see if I can narrow this down. bear with me. My computer is lagging. My comments are coming in, but they're coming in. Comments that it looks like you maybe have typed in a while ago are coming in now. Let me look on the other side here. And let's see. All right, if you have any questions or comments, phone lines are still open. 917-889-9924. We had some callers on earlier, but I got a little long-winded, and I think they may have fallen off. Apologize. But I am watching the switchboard now, 917-889-9924. I was actually going to try to set up a Zoom call today, but the way I've got my switchboard stuff set up, I need to get some new headphones. So I actually ordered some. I'm hoping that I'll be able to do it that way here next time. Where is the video? Here we go. All right. We're going to wrap it up with that. I think there's more comments. I still see stuff popping up, but it's not coming in order, so I think we've got a lag here. So that being said, it is 8:30. I went an hour and a half just on contracts. Remember, read the contracts. Read everything. Read all the fine print. As a one-truck carrier, yes, you can make changes to these contracts. You can negotiate the contracts. You might not have a lot of leverage. They might not agree to it. So what do you do if they don't agree to your changes? You make note of the problems, and you set your own hard limits. So if it's an issue with payment, make sure you never get in too deep with that one particular customer. If it's an issue with insurance things, make sure that all your I's are dotted, T's are crossed. Same thing, bill of ladings, shipper loading count. Make sure that you run your business so that you are never in violation of any of these terms. Make sure, again, you read everything. Do not just sign everything. If you just sign it, there's penalties and different things that can come up. Read it, understand it. It's not rocket science. They're almost all in layman's terms. They're not hard to understand. We're not talking about major financial trading and real estate and different things. I mean, these are really straightforward contracts, but they could result in a lot of money and a lot of liability. Could result in you going bankrupt, losing everything you own, losing your house. Even if, there's terms in some of these contracts. Again, if you work with a factoring company, you've got a contract. Even the factoring companies that say they don't have a contract, they give you a one-page form that says you agree to their terms and conditions, sign here. That's a contract. And that's even worse because usually their terms and conditions are 40 pages long. And because it's just terms and conditions, they can change them at any time. And there's nothing you can do about it. So it's worse than a regular signed contract. Read those because there are terms in a lot of these that literally say, doesn't matter if you're incorporated or LLC, they can come after you personally. I know factoring companies that have repossessed houses and cars over claims issues. I know brokers that have put companies out of business. I told the story of one already. I know, the bill of lading issues that can cause insurance companies to deny claims and put you on the hook. There are just so many things, and it all comes down to simple paperwork. There's more to driving a truck than just driving a truck. This is why autonomous trucks will easily take over, because the driving of the truck part is not the complicated part. The paperwork that goes into it is the complicated part. And the drivers, for by and large, don't do the paperwork right. So we've got to get that figured out. That being said, have a good night, everybody. I'm going to do another show here real soon. We'll talk about just current events in the industry. I know it's probably a lot more exciting. This was probably the most boring show for some of you, but it's important stuff. You got to read it. Read them all. Every contract with factors, dispatch companies, everything. Read them all. And now we have a caller. And the 618 area code. If you have a question or comment, go ahead and press number 1. I believe we have somebody that does have a question before we go. And the 618 area code, I'm going to bring you on. I don't believe Elizabeth is screening this call, so I'm just bringing you on direct. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's see if I can make sure I can hear you. Okay. All right. Welcome to the show. How can I help you?
Hi, this is Anthony. I've watched you for a while on all your blog talk shows. I've been on YouTube following you as well. My question is, man, how do I sign up? Could I just stand by and talk to you offline, or how does that process work?
Yeah, if you want to check us out, send me an email, info@patriotstartrucks.com, or you can check us out. Just go to our website, patriotstartrucks.com, and there's a contact button there. Or you can email me directly, kenny@udriveu.com, and we can talk after the show.
Okay, roger that. Hey, okay, so the actual other question I have is, as far as getting Amazon direct freight versus working the stock market. I mean,
Spot market,
you know what I'm
gotcha.
trying to say. Sorry, I can't. Yes, spot market. I know there's differences. I do understand that. But do you deal with any contract freight at all?
Yes, and we work with Amazon as well. So Amazon's model is a little different. Are you just getting started?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do you already have your authority?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and how long have you been in business?
2 years, been in business, but I've been leased on. Just received my authority recently.
Okay.
And I'm looking to move forward.
Okay. Do you own a trailer?
No. I just paid my truck off, and I was thinking to run power on.
Gotcha. Okay, so Amazon is an option. The way Amazon works is you have to go through their Amazon Relay platform, which is basically their version of a spot market board. They put everything on their platform, and you download their app, and you select loads as they pop up. And they're very, very particular, I'll tell you that, as far as you make sure you use the app for everything. And it's easy to sign up to get started with them. Relay at relay.amazon.com, and get started, get set up, put your MC number in. As long as you have the proper insurances, you should be good to go with them. And then after you build a good reputation, in the beginning, they don't even offer you all the loads up front. After you build a good reputation with them, they'll offer you better paying loads, better lanes, and you keep your scores up. If you have any problems, if you're so much as 1 minute late, 1 minute late to them is no different than being an hour late, or falling off the load. It's a huge ding on your score. And if you let your scores drop too much, they stop offering you the premium loads, and you're back down to kind of the beginner stuff. If you build a good enough reputation with them long term, then they start offering you some different contract options. But in the beginning, it's very, very difficult, and I don't know what area of the country you're in. Some areas are a lot better than others.
Oh, Midwest.
Okay.
Southern Illinois.
Okay. Southern Illinois is kind of a tough market with Amazon. That's why, I asked if you had a trailer or not. Power only is a very difficult way to go. I can tell you that right up front. If you have your own authority and you're working power only, if you don't have a trailer, it's very difficult to find companies that will let you pull their trailers that pay enough. I mean, that equipment costs money, so they have to recoup their cost for the equipment by paying you less. And if you own the trailer, you own the equipment, you have the ability to keep your costs as low as possible, keep your fuel economy, spec the trailer, the equipment the way you need to, and so forth. But when you're relying on somebody else's equipment to function, they definitely take more than their fair share in some cases. So you have to be very careful with that. But Amazon is one of many that do it. All of the major brokers, Prime has a power-only program. JB Hunt has a power-only program. Hirschbach has a power-only program. And I believe Swift and Schneider and so forth, I believe they all have power-only programs. And it's just a matter of getting in with them and figuring out their systems.
Okay. Yeah, I've been leased on with Schneider before.
Okay.
So as far as dealing with you as a direct broker, I'll just email you.
Yeah,
If that's okay.
just email me. Now, I can tell you this. I'm a broker kind of secondary. I'm a carrier first. So we don't have we're not a major broker where we're brokering thousands of loads every week, right? We have a few dozen loads a month, and it may or may not work for you. And most of our stuff is, I'm not trying to plug my company, but that's what it's turning into. But most of our stuff would require you to have a trailer. We don't have any of our own power-only type stuff.
Yeah, I was trying to buy a trailer, and I've called like freaking 10, 15 dealerships, and everybody's sold out, and the wait list is
Trailers
next year.
are very hard to come by. Trailers are very hard to come by right now. So power only may be your only option until something comes up. Keep your eye out. Don't be afraid to look at some older equipment. I know there's a big, a scare, and a lot of people say don't get a trailer older than 10 years, but an 11 or 12, 15-year-old trailer is better than no trailer, in my opinion. Most places will load you. The heavy stuff like auto parts and paper might be a problem, but for the most part, you will keep it loaded even if it's an older trailer, and you can still find some of those out there. There's auctions almost every day. There are, check around and see what's out there. Most of the newer trailers are being sucked up, but, these are the types of things that you have to kind of plan for when you start a new business, and it's very difficult when you get to this level, and then you find out that it's not an option. So check into the power only programs with some of the mega fleets for now, and see if that works for you. And I'm not talking about being leased to a carrier like Schneider. I'm talking about working under your own authority in conjunction with them. I think Prime that's one of the more popular programs. They call it their advanced fleet. And it's people that have their own authority that are basically pulling power-only trailers for them. And they're hard up for trucks. So I don't know, if they're hiring right now. I'm assuming they would be because they've got a ton of freight that's got to get moved. And, they've got options for you. But all the different brokers do. So it's a good place to check. But if I were you, I would keep looking, and I would do everything I can to get a trailer as soon as possible.
Thanks, Kenny. Appreciate your time, man.
All right. And I'm sorry if that turned out to be like bearer of bad news information, but, I'm sure that you can make it work and stick it out until the market turns around. Now, let me give you one bit of glimpse of good light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. This market right now is premium rates, premium money. Everybody is using their equipment. Capacity is tight. It won't last forever. As soon as we get the all clear on this virus, as soon as the emergency exemptions go away, as soon as the ports get cleared up, and it might not be for 6 months, might not be till next year, who knows when, but it will happen. When it does, rates are going to turn around the other way, on the spot market at least. They always do. And what will happen is you are going to see a lot of companies going out of business. We saw a lot of companies go out of business in 2019 because they got started in 2018 when rates were phenomenal. 2019, rates were just kind of average. They weren't phenomenal, but they were just average. And a lot of people weren't prepared for that, and they sold off their equipment. As soon as the market turns, you will see a lot of really good equipment for sale and probably get really good prices on them. So if you can stick it out till then that's a good time to try to buy.
Okay.
All right.
Hey, Kenny, one other question. As far as when you pay for equipment in cash, are you the type that would recommend leveraging your income and making payments versus paying off cash? I'm kind of second guessing my decision here.
Okay, so this is one where there are two schools of thought to this. If you have the cash and you won't be depleted paying cash, I am a big fan of paying cash. Zero debt is nice. Some of these guys are going out buying, brand new trucks, and they just barely have enough to make ends meet after they make their truck payment, but they just really want to have this new equipment. If that's you, I would finance it, do everything you can to try to stretch it out, make your money work for you. But if you have enough cash, pay cash for it, and still have plenty in reserve, cash is king. I mean, banks are making a lot of money loaning out money, right? So if you can save that money, that's huge.
Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one. And we do have one other caller. I think. I'm just waiting for Elizabeth to get back to me on this one. All right. She gave me the wrap it up like is a sign. So, all right. I was trying to wrap it up when we got that last phone call. I think now is the time. So, okay, everyone. I appreciate you joining in. We'll do a show that's a little more exciting because I know this is the most dry, boring content that we could possibly have, but I think it's important stuff. Hopefully somebody, and you know, whether you're watching live or I'm going to leave this recorded show up, hopefully somebody gets enough out of this that it could potentially save somebody from going out of business. So I do think this is important information, but it's not super fun information. So I apologize for this slow, boring topic tonight. But as always, dream big, aim high, strategize your plan. You have to earn it because you don't deserve it unless you earn it. Have a good night, everybody.